Recorded on the 20th of March, 2025. It's the Rod and Brody Show.
Ha! No, not really. It's never about us, ever.
No.
Ever. Actually, mostly Brody. I think it's about you because you're the young one with the baby. So you're more important. You've got you're raising the youth. Yeah. So yeah, it's just you and I think, just so folks know that are just listening in, Ray is under the weather, unfortunately. So we'll just hope that she gets better. That is kind of one of the dangers of having young kids, right? Because they, you get everything that they bring home. I don't think you've experienced that yet, Brody, but you will.
Well, she doesn't really go anywhere right now. Well, I shouldn't say that. So she had probably the flu for a week in February, and I'm still getting over the cold I received from her last week. And, whatever is what it is. So what are you going to do? Like, I can't get worried about it. Slam vitamin D, drink a lot of water, and try to eat healthy, get sleep. It's all good. Yeah.
Yeah. I was actually not feeling super well earlier today, but I just got a big burst of energy for whatever reason, just about showtime. I guess that happens every time. Who knows? It's probably mental. It's probably something psychological, but I'm like, yes, because I love the show. But I will mention this, and I'm not a salesperson by any means. Me, Edward is the salesperson.
Yes.
On the team.
Well established. Yeah.
And he'll be here soon, probably. But most folks know I was in Denmark a few weeks ago. Took my wife with me. We met with our good friend of the show, Morton. And of course, Henrik was there as well. But Morton's wife sells this stuff called Zenzinio. I forget how you actually pronounce it. But yeah, it's like a health thing where they actually take your blood and they do these tests. The tests come back and it determines exactly what of their products that you will actually help you. And so I've been taking this stuff for a couple of weeks, and no, I feel really good. and I don't mean wacky good. I don't mean, I'm
good is relative.
I'm losing my balance and falling down kind of good. Talking about
I want to learn more about these mystery Danish drugs you are taking.
Yeah. I guess it is more European or whatever, but no. I thought that was kind of interesting. Brody, have you done anything I don't know, did you break anything this week? Did you do anything special? Because when you think about it, this is our second show of this week. We doubled up this week because we have a fantastic guest coming up here shortly. So.
Excited for our guest. Liz is amazing. I don't break anything, Rod. Of course not. I'm a consultant. Right. We never break anything except hearts when we have to leave customer engagements.
Breaking
it's like,
hearts.
Sorry, you're out of money. I have to leave. But if you have more money, I'll stay. No, but in all seriousness, it's been quite the busy week. Building on what I talked about on Monday, I'm working a lot in the Azure infrastructure and security space lately, and learning a whole bunch each and every day. And honestly, it's just with one of my projects right now, where there are a number of key massive decisions that I'm helping to drive on design, landing zones, architecture, etc. And I think we're over the hump on the big stuff, which is really good. I'm learning all about Azure Virtual Network Manager to enforce network policy, to subscriptions downstream from the root of Azure tenants. It's especially important for ensuring that, hey, downstream, your administrative users that may have localized administrative permissions cannot override or bypass any of the security standards that you have at the top level. So did a okay job of explaining that. I think we could deep dive into it more. Maybe we get somebody on the show to talk about that. Maybe someone on my team will want to come on the show after we survive our project together. I got I'm working on some. Speaking of sales, I'm assisting the architect team on some pre-sales engagements. And so
don't let Edward know. He'll think you're going for his job.
Don't want to let him know. But one is a Purview data governance, data security, data protection engagement, and then another one is a massive RFP for a gigantic company everyone's heard of. and your free time is evaporated. So it's just, but it's interesting the timing, because the major RFP item was it's Azure workloads, and I would not have been anywhere near as equipped to even think about the protection mechanisms before I had the current project that I'm on. So it's just kind of like go with the flow in consulting, like, and just, there's it's never boring. Put it that way.
I would think not. No, because your job literally changes all the time, just depending on what customer project and all that stuff. So that's actually a pretty cool place to be in, I would think. Otherwise, I think work would become kind of normalized or mundane, I guess, if you will. I think Brody, you and I are very similar in that you kind of have to have things that challenge you all the time. Otherwise, you're just like, I'm going to do something else.
Agreed.
But I think that's just kind of our type or our mentality, just kind of general IT pro or maybe security in general, right? You're always trying to put out fires, so that kind of teaches you to always look for those new things. We have a couple guests of our audience I wanted to kind of highlight real quick. Noodle's here, by the way, and also Icelandic Cloud Queen. And I thought I knew who that was, and now I'm absolutely sure that it's Linda. We actually need to have both of them on the show coming up, so I'm hoping that we'll be able to reach out here shortly to have them both. Linda's amazing. She has an awesome story about where she works and the things that she does. So we should definitely have her on here in the near future. And of course, obviously Noodle, he's doing all things Sentinel. And we talked last show on Monday about his new blog that he rolled out. So if you go to sentinel.blog, you'll find Noodle's blog. And how many blog posts do you have already, Noodle? He cheated. He released 20 at once or something like that.
It's ridiculous. Well, I'd like to know how he got that domain.
Right?
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Why haven't you thought of that?
I'm not Noodle. I'm not as cool
There
as
you go.
Noodle. Yeah,
There you
we
go.
need more Noodle. We already figured that out last time.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And Noodle's killing it. He was like, "Hey, why haven't you reshared my LinkedIn post?" I'm like, "Buddy, I haven't had any time for LinkedIn." So
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
glad you're killing it.
that's actually kind of part of my job. So I did share his, and put a couple of his blog posts will be in tomorrow's Seam XDR newsletter, by the way, that goes out to 30,000 people. So other people will see it tomorrow.
Nice.
I do for our people. Yeah. But yeah, this is Women in Cyber Month. I feel a little strange, a little weird that Ray is not here. So it's just literally two guys talking to Liz, who's upcoming here shortly.
We're enabling an important themed month.
Yeah.
And regardless if we have gender equality on the host front, we have gender equality on the guest front. So,
and that's the important thing. But
yeah,
hopefully Liz doesn't feel like that puts more pressure on her to stand out, but we'll see.
Let's ask her. Welcome, Liz, to the show.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Oh,
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, very nice. Well, thank you very much for having me. And yes, it's funny that you would be talking about, me being the only woman right now on the call, because that is sort of the story of my life.
Oh no.
I started in IT about 20 years ago. And then shortly after that, actually not shortly after that, about 10 years later, I got into security full time. And when that happened, I remember back in the days when we were on site with customers, one of the architects, a friend of mine, John Sheckman, that some people might know, a longtime Sentinel guy, he asked me once when we were on this project, he said, does it feel weird to you when you are the only woman in the room? Or are you just used to it? And I said, yeah, I'm pretty used to it. But every once in a while, when I would be in a room with the Microsoft team and the client, and I would look around and I would realize I'm the only woman, I would feel some sadness, that we were kind of in that situation for whatever reason. Right. Because cybersecurity is a great career, IT is a great career, and I would just love to continue to see more women reap those benefits.
Well said. We need everyone's backgrounds and opinions, regardless of who you are, where you come from, where your education is. Doesn't matter. So yeah, that's fair, Liz. I feel you. Sometimes, just to relate, sometimes if I join the podcast and it's Rod and Edward, and I'm the only person that was born in a reasonable amount of time and wasn't around when the dinosaurs roamed the earth, I feel alone and sad that I don't get their weird references for TV shows that are no longer on television. But no, in all seriousness, like this is why we're doing the theme of the month here. This is why we're bringing awareness to this. Like Liz is, I'll let her do her full intro in a second here, but Liz has been nothing but an amazing member of our worldwide security community internally at Microsoft since I joined over 4 years ago. And honestly, working inside of Microsoft, it's of course there's a disparity between genders, right? That's just a fact. But there's just so many amazing women in the community that I interact with weekly, daily, monthly, and I'm blessed. We're blessed as a community and as a company to have that type of environment, because it's just an amazing group of individuals with different backgrounds and experiences helping one another out. And ideally one day we get to a better place, but all we can do right here, Liz, is set you up for inspiring others right now, and that's what we're doing this month. And I just want to say thank you for being so considerate for me over the last little while, helping me out and giving me advice or coming on the show, etc. Because it's just been a pleasure to get to know you over the last 4 years, and you've got an amazing career. I'm sure you're going to tell us all about. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
And to interject there as well, just kind of add on to what Brody was saying, Liz, I just, you probably don't know this, but when I joined Microsoft and saw how you participated and how you led in the internal communities, how I saw that, I thought that was actually pretty awesome, and made me, because I kind of came from a community space long before joining Microsoft, and just the way that you led those, I had a lot to learn from you too as well. And when Brody said, "Hey, Liz, Liz can come on the show," I thought, man, why haven't we had you on here before? Because you have a lot to share. So thank you for being on the show, and thank you for all you do, by the way.
Oh, you're very welcome. Yeah, and I kind of laughed because I saw on LinkedIn someone referred to me as a secret that Microsoft has, and
That was me.
I first thought, man, we're gonna have to subtitle this show, how to brand yourself better so that people know who you are. But then I realized, no, that's not true. That's the thing about it, is that some people are public facing at Microsoft. We know them, like you guys, like some of the people on the product group, John Favell, as well, very, very public faces of Microsoft. But for every one of you guys, there's many more of us that are working behind the scenes, doing amazing things. And I'm even surprised myself sometimes when someone posts on LinkedIn that I don't know, and talks about the things that they're doing at Microsoft. So just a lot of very awesome people there. And what some people don't know about Microsoft is that we are incentivized every twice a year, every 6 months, whatever you want to call it, when we do our performance reviews. And we talk about what we've done over the last half year. We absolutely are required to list, here are the things that I have done to help other people here at Microsoft. And we are measured on how we help each other, which when I learned this, I thought, my God, why does every company not do this? It would be so amazing, Yeah. But yeah, it's been my privilege to work with a lot of great people at Microsoft. And I guess I should talk a little bit about what I actually do there. So I started 7 years ago at Microsoft. It was a huge transformation for me because I had actually spent most of my career working in small and medium business, where a client of 5,000 people was considered huge. So all of a sudden, I was now at this enterprise company with customers that have hundreds of thousands of people worldwide that they're supporting. It was a whole different world. And so I was kind of overwhelmed to start with. And I actually joined the community that Brody and Rod are talking about, this security community within Microsoft, because I felt like, hey, I would love to meet other people at this company who are. I thought to myself, I will join this community and I will meet some like-minded friends. And I really did. And I really met a lot of wonderful people through the community.
Well put. Well put. And I agree with you. I don't know why. And I actually, I'm with you. I don't have a, as my friend Herman would say, enterprise experience. I was also more SMB, definitely very small organization focused for a while. So if other large organizations aren't encouraging their teams to help one another and then prove how they're doing that to help one another grow, I mean, like, it seems like a no-brainer, Liz, right? So that's a very fair call out. And yeah, the community aspect, when you join Microsoft, it's distribution lists and teams groups and all these little, spots where people hang out or they communicate. And it's pretty much impossible to get everybody in a certain discipline or topic in one place, right? And but the community work that Microsoft has championed is an opportunity to bring people together across all these different organizations, across all these different time zones, et cetera. And it doesn't matter if you're Edwards in sales or if you're in consulting and architecture or marketing and product, people have a place where they can go and actually converse, right? And that's very helpful, especially when you're joining a mega corp, because you just, and in a remote environment too. Like I was hired during COVID, so I basically just get a laptop and I'm at home and I'm like, okay, now I'm on the Microsoft domain. I mean, like this, look at the gal, I don't even know where to start.
Well, Liz says something important, I think, that we need to highlight. She talked about community, but notice the word she used. So I'm going to come back to this because this is like a soapbox moment, I think, because I've been thinking about this recently. We talk at Microsoft a lot of times with customers, with our internal folks, building partnerships. And to me, I think that's the wrong term. Liz said community, it's building or finding friends, building friendships. You think about that discussion between a partnership and a friendship, and I think you kind of understand kind of where I'm going. A partnership is everybody comes to the table with something to give each other to trade, right? But a friendship, it's just like a conversation, it's this discussion. You're just there to learn from other people. You're there to have that discussion. And I think that's kind of the important thing to think about. And where I believe, at least our internal communities, that Microsoft does really well.
Well said, Rod. Solid soapbox.
Yeah, thank you. And I realize I still haven't said what I do. So let me go back to that again. So joined Microsoft 7 years ago, part of the consulting practice, worked as a consultant, actually was hired to do Azure migration. I'll talk about kind of later how that happened, but I never did any Azure migrations except as a security person. Right away, I got there and they found out I knew cloud security. And this was back in 2018 when cloud security was a relatively new thing. And so it opened a lot of doors for me within Microsoft. And I went relatively quickly from consultant to senior consultant to architect, and I began leading some security on some of our large projects, just doing all kinds of different things. I was very well known for a few years as someone who would do the thing that nobody else wanted to touch. For example, I think at one point in the consulting organization, we had 3 people that would do threat modeling, that knew how to do threat modeling. And one person, also Heinrich, also does Azure policy. So he was constantly busy. You could never get him for any assignments. Another great longtime Microsoft employee, Michael Howard, did threat modeling. He left our organization to go back to engineering. So now we were down to one guy, my good friend Taylor Bianchi, who knew how to do threat modeling, but he was in the reserves. And so he got called, and we knew he was going to be gone for 3 months. We had this backlog of thread modeling jobs, and we were trying to figure out who could pick up thread modeling really quickly and start doing some of this work. And I said, yeah, I'll do it. So I was before long, I was simultaneously thread modeling mainframe applications and big data cloud applications, while also doing other things on the side. So literally at one point I came to a new team, and upon meeting the manager for the first time, I said, please help me learn to say no, because apparently I
Yes.
do not know how to do that.
I've heard that before. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt.
Exactly.
Microsoft, other roles, duties as required. Yeah, you're right. You have to set boundaries.
Yes, it's IT, really. It's IT in general. And thank you very much. Impressive, foolish, I don't know. But yeah, I then kind of moved on, and right now I'm working in a group called Meerkat, MIRCAT, because of course we always have to have a cool acronym for everything.
Of course.
But we are the Microsoft Incident Response Critical Action Team, which I love that name because it makes me sound much cooler than I am. But we do compromise recovery, and we also help our DART incident response team on some of the larger customer incident response activities. So I'm very much focused right now on helping customers who are trying to prevent a breach, are in the middle of a breach, or are trying to recover from a breach situation.
Well, that's stressful for the customer, but I would guess it's probably stressful for you as well, and you probably have some really good stories. Not that you have to tell them, but
I got a lot of stories. But yeah, actually, yeah, I love to talk, as I can, about the things that I see, and also the things that I'm learning, because I'm a student right now at the SANS Institute, and
cool.
I really changed my focus. My focus at one point was, leading cloud security projects, which was a great experience for me. I learned a lot. I grew a lot as a leader and a person. But at the same time, I really yearned to be more on the incident response SOC operations side. And I would love to talk later about, how do you make a change when you are known
Mm.
as one thing,
Mm.
and how do you allow yourself to make the change? And anyway, but I'll
Yeah.
just kind of finish my thought. Yeah, between the things I get to do with customers and the classes I'm taking right now, I do have a lot of good stories, and that is really what drives me. Is I I was responsible in a previous job for the security of an organization, so I very much am passionate about helping customers as much as possible understand what are the current threats, what should they prioritize, so they don't end up in a bad situation.
Yeah. So you've pivoted a lot, even within your role at Microsoft. But let's step way back, because at the beginning you talked about working for 10 years and then going into security. So that was like your first pivot, right? Potentially.
Mhm. Yeah.
We have a lot, especially this happens every year when we do Women in Cybersecurity. We have a lot of people that listen in or watch, and they're not in security, they're interested in it. They're actually trying to figure out what that career would look like if they were be able to pivot into it. What was the reasons that led you to pivot into security in the first place?
Great question.
Yeah, that is a great question. And one of the few regrets I have in my career is that I waited so long to get into security.
Mm.
I'm a little bit embarrassed to say that 10, 15 years ago, I was still under the naive impression that security was something that 20-year-old guys in black hoodies did. And
Or
that
Marvel hoodie.
and that, a woman of a certain age did not belong in security, potentially. Even though I had met women who were in security of all ages, I just convinced myself that maybe this was not something for me. or not available to me. And a wonderful SANS instructor called Ted Donopoulos, he often does webinars on getting into security or becoming a consultant if you're working in security but want to go it alone. And anyway, one time I shyly asked him, because he had kind of an ask me anything offline thing, and I shyly asked him, am I someone who could get into security? Am I too old? Is it only 20-year-old guys? And he was like, of course not. It's for everybody of all ages. And that is 100% true. I have never regretted going into security. It has opened up so many doors for me, and just been a great time. So if you're thinking about it, you're on the fence, but you want to do it, absolutely start moving in that direction now. Don't wait.
Well, I think that original pivot, I don't know if that was the instigator or what, but that really kind of plays into how you have modeled your career afterwards, because that individual said, hey, you should do security. And here you are at Microsoft internally in these communities telling other people, hey, you can do security. So you're actually living exactly what happened to you within Microsoft. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And I had a relatively easy time getting started in security. I was very fortunate. Again, when I graduated college, I was head of one of the honor societies, and when I graduated, they gave me a framed print that sits over my fireplace, and it's one of those, back from the day when they would have like a single word and then a line under it with a nice picture.
Right.
Some of you may remember those. Anyway,
Yep.
the caption is success, and it was,
Classic.
being ready for opportunity when it comes along, or something to that effect. And so that's really kind of what it's about, is and what happened for me, what really propelled my career forward was right as I made the decision, I am going to leave this job that I'm comfortable at as an IT manager here in Houston, Texas. I'm going to leave that job and go into cybersecurity. I went to lunch with a good friend of mine, Ryan, and he worked at a consulting firm that I had also worked at a few years previously. And Ryan knew a lot of people. So my plan was, I'm going to go to lunch with Ryan and I'm going to tell him, I'm going into security. Could you be on the lookout for anybody that's looking for someone for security? And I'll never forget, we sat down for lunch, and before I could get anything out, he pops in with, hey, did you hear the consulting firm has just been bought by a bigger Microsoft partner, and we're only going to do Azure cloud work now. And he said, and I'm going to be a director. And right there, without even thinking, I said, hire me. Let me come and work for you. And he looked just like you did, Brody. He was just like, what? And it was so unlike
awesome.
me. Yeah, it was so unlike me, you guys, because what, my whole life I was a very shy person, and my normal MO in that situation would have been, to have a nice lunch, and then at the end to kind of say something like, yeah, and good luck with the new venture. And, if you guys need anybody, or send an email, hey, if you guys ever need anybody. But I didn't do that. Instead, very direct, hire me. Let me come and work for you.
Nice.
And yeah, so they did. They hired me, and I started there. And again, that's how I got this cloud security experience before a lot of people, even at Microsoft, had it. Um, it was still a very new field at that time. Azure was new, and this idea of securing Azure at the time was really new.
Oh, that's very cool, Liz. I'm glad you could just tell. Well, it just came from inside. Like, hey, I got to jump on this, right? And it went against all of your previous timidness, which I've definitely experienced. I'm sure other people have experienced that as well. Jumping on the opportunity. Well, it just goes to show you it worked out. I mean, you're clearly passionate about it at some level enough to jump in there and want to get involved in it. And I mean, hey, you've been working in the proactive space and consulting which I'm sure you were nodding when I was telling my story about how there's never a dull moment, right, in ISD. And now you're working in Meerkat. And I know one of the areas that you focus on a lot in terms of working with customers on is how to improve their cyber resiliency, right? Let's think about not only like, hey, let's just all just get it out of the way here. You're going to have something occur, right? There is going to be an event, right? So it's the zero trust mindsets, the there's always someone on the inside kind of breach mindset, right? And now you're working with customers after the fact on recovery, right? They could probably like sit back and be like, oh, we should have known, or we should have done this. And it's like, okay, that's fine, but like, let's take a step back now and understand how we can make you more resilient in the future, because these things are going to happen, and we're going to need to plan for them, right? So I'd love to hear, the styles of the conversations that you have with customers and how you prepare them for that mindset shift if they're not already in there, and like what practical things you would suggest as well.
Yes, absolutely. We we started thinking a lot this fiscal year. Microsoft did about this concept of cyber resiliency, and I really looked into this deeply because if you've noticed over the last couple of years, resiliency is everywhere. People since the pandemic, right? Everyone's kind of tacking the word resiliency onto anything else. Emotional resiliency. I heard a podcast a couple of weeks ago where they were talking about conflict resiliency, and I just thought, okay, for goodness sakes. But when I looked into cyber resiliency as a concept, I was really interested to learn that similar to zero trust, it is not a buzzword. It did not just pop out of nowhere the last couple of years. It is not a Microsoft only thing. It's actually based on NIST and MITRE frameworks that go back to 2010. And the idea, as Bernie mentioned, is that unfortunately it is just very easy for attackers to find an opportunity to get into an organization, especially if they are extremely skilled, especially if they are highly motivated to get into that particular organization. Of course, at Microsoft, we deal sometimes with nation state actors. We see the most skilled actors, that are really not possible to completely defend against. So we have to start thinking about how do we protect our critical workloads if and when they do get in? How do we make sure that when they get in, they don't completely take over our Active Directory? They don't decimate, the VM hypervisors that hold our business critical assets.
Yeah.
When we're working with clients, we have this concept of tiering, Active Directory tiering. Some of you may be familiar with. And when we talk about that, tier 0 is your identity plane, including your Active Directory, your intra-tenant, and then we think also about tier 1. And traditionally, tier 1 was all the servers across your organization that are not domain controllers. My team looks at it a little bit differently, and they say all servers are not created equal. What are the
Agreed.
servers, right? What are the servers? What are the applications? What are the containers that if these were to go down for any length of time, whether it be a day or a week or even an hour, your business would really suffer. And the cool thing about it is business people really relate to this conversation. A lot of times as security people, we have a hard time getting business people on board. But a lot of times business people already know this stuff. They have already figured out exactly what it's going to cost the company to be down for that day, hour, even minute,
Right.
So we prioritize protection of those critical assets. And we also encourage customers, I'm sorry, I'm on my soapbox, but we also encourage customers, it's not an all or nothing mentality. For example, I was talking to a client this week that really had their stuff together across so many areas of security. And they, like many of our clients, they can't necessarily give YubiKeys to all their employees. in terms of expense, in terms of feasibility, but they have made sure that their administrators have them.
Good.
And I thought, good for you. Exactly. Good for you. On the other hand, we also counsel our clients, oh, hey, how are you? We also counsel our clients routinely, where you can, let's make sure that we finish the job. We don't do something only halfway. For example, very often when we're dealing with clients, they're using privileged identity management, but they're only using it for intro roles. I was in the middle of a very unfortunate incident response scenario where a poor IT manager in an organization during the incident response was trying to round up application owners for many, many subscriptions and try to figure out, hey, what kind of PIM, what kind of identity controls do we need to place on these subscriptions right now while we try to recover from this incident response that is still ongoing. It's just really unfortunate that our clients are not looking at their Azure subscriptions and saying, hey, the most important ones, this is where we have to make sure that we have privileged identity management.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. Do you know Herman Opperman, Liz?
Oh, of course.
Yeah, of course. I had the pleasure of working with Herman on a local project where everybody got to fly to me, which is pretty rare because no one flies to Canada for projects generally. And the customer got popped, and I learned from the identity master himself all about this front. And honestly, I think Microsoft was doing I think we've improved would be the better way of putting that in terms of showing customers or helping the customers understand what a privileged identity in the cloud actually is, right? Because there's a lot of documentation out there about the on-prem AD privileged roles, right? And all of us dinosaurs who grew up in the system and AD days, we know what those are, right? But there is a myriad of built-in roles in the Azure cloud with various different privilege aspects. And I mean, I learned that like a building administrator had the ability to, duplicate a tenant, and then you could create another GA. Like there's all these kind of like threat vectors that you don't think about. You think about like, oh, global admin, security admin, and owner, and like these are the big ones. But there's a lot to consider here, right? And you're right. Now, if you're kind of experience managing and protecting your on-prem identities, you absolutely need to do the same thing in a different structure within Azure, right? And you need to ensure also that that the communication between these two different identity planes is only where it needs to be. That it's not just wide open. You're not duplicating admin accounts from from both directions unless absolutely necessary. This is a major thing for customers and identities. I couldn't agree with you more. I could go on and on, but anyway, I'll finish with documentation and the portal now show better, in my opinion, what we consider to be a privileged account, like right in the portal. And we didn't used to have that. Yeah. We would show the customer this deck after a compromise recovery, and I'm like, why aren't we in front of the customers beforehand in the public sphere and like really helping them understand this prior to the event? So everything you just said, I resonate with highly there, Liz. I appreciate it.
Well, and I think also, you can't really discount that discussion, Liz, that you have with the customer. I think it's super important to understand customers get it when they can understand the impact, right? So just breaking it down by the different segments, the different things that need to be up all day long, I think is important.
Business risk, right? It's a risk conversation.
Yeah.
How does it ever relate to, do you ever use any, because you mentioned zero trust, obviously customers need to get that eventually, or not eventually, they need to get that. How does that, does that ever lead into the discussion of what we're doing at Microsoft from a Secure Future initiative, or is that even part of that discussion at that point?
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that too, because I actually recently published a blog on the Microsoft the main sort of Microsoft tech community blog. And it's the first of a series of 3. And the first part looks at sort of where this concept of cyber resiliency came from. And it sort of introduces Microsoft's approach. And then the second part, which should be out, I think, next week, is actually going to dive into what you're talking about. How Microsoft has been a leader in the idea of and the concept of cyber resilience for many years, going back to even the days of trustworthy compute with Bill Gates. in 2002, and it's very much echoed in the Secure Future initiative. So I have not per se talked too much about Secure Future Initiative SFI with customers, but for example, I did have a conversation with a client, kind of interesting. People might find it kind of interesting. So I did an assessment with a client this week, and one of the things that we found, which is kind of common, is that they allow users on their work device to check personal email. And I honestly don't know where we are with that at Microsoft, because at a certain point this year, because of our Secure Future initiative, I made it a commitment myself that I was not going to check my personal email on my work device anymore. And I'm talking about the laptop. The phone is fine. We have sandboxing technology on the phones. But, so I was kind of explaining to them, I consider myself a security leader at Microsoft. And so I'm going to, do this thing that is inconvenient for me sometimes, yes, but very, very important in protecting our organization. And I'm going to be the example of doing that. So it's very true. We're all kind of looking at security in a different way these days. And truly, SFI is Microsoft as a company saying, this is how we improve our own cyber resilience. We don't just tell you what you should do. We practice what we preach.
I'd like to comment
it's
on
not
that.
marketing. Sorry, Edward. Go ahead, buddy.
And my apologies for being late. It's so ironic that I jumped into the conversation extremely late. Good to meet you, Liz.
Nice to see you.
And I was helping a customer troubleshoot something where we're looking at permissioning around a subscription being used to do something, right? And I think when we were super experienced, we sort of sometimes forget the basics. So when people ask me to explain the cloud, I go, well, it's really interesting. It's what you have, what you can prove, and what you know. And then the other thing is, a tenant is where you live, a subscription is how you pay rent, and a directory is who is in charge of the keys, right? And so the directory being your ID is like, all right, this is who you are and what you can do. Subscription is how you pay for stuff. And then you look at the tenant where you can execute these things. And I start from that very basic piece. And I use that today to try to troubleshoot a very complex thing. Did we figure it out? Not quite, but we made some stuff manifest and make the customer scratch their head today. Like, how were you able to do that? I do not know. We need to do it. Second thing is, when you look at identities, they become so complex that a lot of people don't want to have imposter syndrome about not knowing how complex Entra identities are, privileged identities are, and things like that. We've gotten away from the management aspect. The management aspect is continuous documentation and access control. And every time you make a change, something is automatically updated. Because when you make the change, very rarely is it documented anywhere. The change is just made. The change control that used to be a big thing early in my career, right? Remember, you couldn't do anything without change control. You had to do it on the weekend and do a cutover. It's that changes just happen. They get permission, they do it, and then the documentation is never there. Got to have access control, got to have continuous documentation and do these things. Right. One last thing on that. You have to think like an adversary. When adversaries come to your environment, the first thing they do is reconnaissance and discovery. If you really want a good documentation of your environment, go get a hacker to come in. This is what you do. Because it sounds like, well, I wouldn't want to do that. If you guys remember Bloodhound, which is now Azure Hound, you'll be surprised how well it can document your privileged identity to domain domination or cloud domination, and you'll get all the documentation. But if you were to tell an admin or someone's running it, you're going to run Azure Hound in their environment, they go crazy. I'm like, you're using the same tools that the adversaries are using. It's control. You'll be surprised how well it documents. PowerShell, Empire, Cobalt, these things are documenting your environment. And now the hacker goes back and he sits back and says, this is the path of least resistance. And I'm going to go this route. And you got to sort of think like the people who want to get unauthorized access to your thing. And that was good. The subscription thing, you'd be surprised how powerful the checkbook is. The subscription is the checkbook. It's powerful. You can do things. Very cool, man.
Well, I'd say, Liz, it's not checking personal email on your work system. That's super admirable. To be honest, I don't know if I'm just lazy-minded. I hadn't even thought about that, but that's also going to be painful. But
I created
it's a
an
good thing
Edge
to do.
profile for personal, and I have that, and
Yeah.
so I do my personal browsing in the Edge profile. But you know what? I think I'm just going to nuke it. You know, Liz just inspired me because, like, what? It's not worth it. And you know, like there's a lot of tie back towards the organization who's monitoring us.
It's like going
to make sure that
camping
we're
and living
safe.
off the grid with a generator for a while.
Actually, my science instructor tells a story about a consulting job that he was on, and the threat actors were so savvy that they targeted the girlfriend of one of the Active Directory administrators at a company. And so they got into his email through hers, and then he's checking email on the same device, that he's administering Active Directory on, which is also a big no-no. And it leads to a breach. So it is a real thing. Unfortunately, it can happen. So we need to take it seriously as much as possible in the corporate environment to have that hard line between the personal and the business.
Good point, Liz. Super good point. Thank you for helping me think about helping all of us think about that. In the interest of time, like, I know you gotta take off in the near term here, and I just want to hit the other major topic that I know you wanted to talk about, which was inspiring other women to get into the field of cybersecurity. What you, as a leader in this field, would provide in terms of advice or guidance on how to break in, lessons learned. I think our audience would appreciate your viewpoint on that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, thank you. When Brody and I talked about, are there any special things that you want to address? I had said, I as I mentioned, I didn't have too much problem getting into cybersecurity, but getting into IT in the first place is another story. And I know that maybe there are people on the call or listening later, or maybe somebody that has been told, oh, you need to get into cybersecurity because there are all these jobs that are unfilled, and these high salaries. And so you just need to go to this school or take this course or get this certification, and you'll be off to the races. And I was in a similar situation, believe it or not, back in the year 2000. I was just out of school, and I really had enjoyed working on computers in the first job that I had out of school. And I decided, I heard the same kind of things around that time about the IT field. And so I paid a good chunk of money to go to the New Horizons Computer Learning School in Houston, Texas. Yeah, New Horizons is still around. I checked it out, and they're still around. Probably mostly virtual, of course, nowadays. But in any case, between New Horizons and the local community college, I went for it. And I was just trying to take all the classes I could. And I remember after I got my first certification, I sent out my resumes, and within a week, my husband now, who was my boyfriend at the time, came home, and I was crying. And he said, "What is going on?" And I said, "I have sent out so many resumes, and I haven't got any calls at all." And it was just, it was very difficult. I got a terrible first job working at a horrible help desk. And it was supporting, believe it or not, back in the day, we used to have compact computers here in Houston, Texas, and horrible computers. You guys, I could not make it up. We would actually talk people through on the phone. There was no remote access in those days. So we would talk our customers through going into MS Config and turning off every optional service just so that these computers would connect to the internet. I could not make that up if I tried. I cannot make that up if I tried. It was such a terrible job. But it was a job in IT, and that got me a better job, and so on and so forth. So if you or someone that you care about is in a situation where, you know, you're trying to get into cybersecurity and it is tougher than they told you it would be, just hang in there. You know, do what you have to do. Take the job, the entry level job that you have to take. Talk to people. If I looked back on my career and I said, Liz, what is something that you wish you had done differently? One, we talked about it earlier. Don't put it off. If it's something you want to do, if you feel it in your heart, do it. But don't do it alone, because again, until I made that big statement, you know, hire me, let me come in and work for
Yeah.
you. Years later, until that time, I was always the shy person, you know, not reaching out to other people in the field, not making connections. That is what is going to help you much more than sending out a ton of resumes or you know, applying to a lot of jobs on LinkedIn. So do what you want to do, but don't do it alone.
So other than that blinding flash, that moment where you had that bravery and you said, hire me, you know, just our audience listening in, what was the thing that you did that as a shy person? Because I think most of us IT pro type, engineer minded type people, we are introverts, right? It's hard for us to kind of do this public thing sometimes or interact with people that we're not familiar with. But what was the thing that forced you to reach out to other people and find a mentor or do the mentorship? How do you open yourself up to that?
Yeah, that is a really great question. And as a matter of fact, a year or two ago, I had a mentee here in Houston, and she was at the local community college, and I was helping her, and I really pushed her to go to things and talk to people. I said, you know, or go to a conference, and so she signed up to go to a conference, and I said, and she said, well, you know, I'm going to go if my friends at school are going to go, and I said, you go alone if you have to. And I said, when you go, you make sure that you talk to people, because that was the other thing. I can remember being at IT conferences before even I was in security, and they would have a happy hour. And I remember sitting at a big table at the happy hour with a bunch of guys, of course, all guys and me. And anyway, we all were just sitting there like this, you know, like eating our food and drinking our drinks, and nobody was saying anything to anybody. And you know, I finally kind of piped up and started talking to the guy next to me. And man, we talked for 45 minutes, I think. I mean, we talked so much. And then when I looked up at a certain point, you know, some of the other guys were talking to each other. So that's the other thing. You know, it's painful, it's difficult, but make sure that you take risks and you come out of your shell a little bit, because man, that guy, I promise you, when I made that connection, when I started talking at that table, everybody else was relieved that I got things going.
Yeah. Right. And I think it's easier to take risks in front of people you don't know and you might never see again than sometimes even your peers, right? So maybe that's a tip. Go find a huge crowd of people you don't know and just do something silly.
And diversify the crowd. I think that situation that you're in, I've been around, it sounds like as long as you have, is I had to get out of my comfort zone by going to the same thing. And so I started going to the table where the salespeople were. Right? I want to go see it.
Yes. What do you do now?
Go to the table where the salespeople are, because you'll hear the gambit and you'll get their perspective. Here's the top security person. You want to work with Brody. He knows how to get it done, so and so. Then you go to the other table. Man, Brody's deep. We were solving this problem. He was labbing this out. And then I do the trifecta, and you go to the last table where the project managers are, because those are the ones who are talking very high level about what is making their life miserable with this project. I can't get the identity team to do this. We can't get procurement to do this. And so when I got everybody's perspective, then I realized everybody's having different challenges, right? And that helped me so much to understand what everybody's sense of urgency was, right? Because we want to deliver, we want to be the smartest, we want to do this, but I've been where you are. You go to the table, or it's aggravating. everybody's talking tech. Oh my God, we've been at work all day. I don't want to talk about
Yeah.
tech. I don't want to talk about something.
But if you're going to a conference, it's kind of like, okay, you know what? We're all here because we're big nerds, right? So I feel
Yeah.
Edward. I got the same vibe. It's like, oh yeah, I guess we could talk
Yeah.
tech. But like, wait a minute, that's the whole point of this.
Yeah.
You know, well, it's not the whole point, but yeah, you got it.
But to what Liz says, professional courage seems to be diminishing because everybody seems to be it seems like everybody has a little bit of imposter syndrome these days, right? And instead of realizing I'm here, that means I'm good. You know,
And we're all learning and flying by the seat of our
I'm
pants,
I'm
right?
good.
So,
You know,
Yeah.
and
But I think sometimes though we assume just based on a person's demeanor, we think we know what they're thinking or what. I'll be honest, I'm a super introvert. When I go to a conference, I can only take so much interaction with people before I just kind of clam up. And I've heard that people think I'm a jerk or I just don't want to talk to people sometimes because,
really, no.
Yeah.
I
like that Rod, he's a jerk. He just won't talk to anybody.
I mean, the
Huge
first
jerk.
time I met you, I was like, this is punishment.
We were at Ignite and everybody was come up to Rod and he'd like totally make time for everybody. And then like after a while, he'd just go
That's
sit down.
learned. That's learned. Yeah. Then I just
Yeah, it's just
disappear
like-
for a while.
Yeah, you got to have that persona, but then it's also like I'm exhausted.
So Liz, I'd like to ask you a question. And once again, I come in late. Now I want to come in and commandeer all your time. I'll just ask one question. How did you sort of, manage being your woman in this industry is still a man thing. Let men tell it. Was it a rehearsed confidence that you had that you always brought your presence to the table and the thing that you were strongest in to make everybody calm down? Because it sounds like you were the calming factor. You were the glue that got everybody to talking. A lot of folks don't want to be the first, but it sounds like for me to come in, I still say the same things over and over. I can sort of read the crowd. If they're been in the industry, I come in and make a self-deprecating joke about, oh yeah, I remember when I did Novell or I did this, right? How do you come in to sort of lower the crowd? Because
That's good.
It's like, who is this person to come in and
It's
say,
like your community pickup line. What is it?
Yeah, there you go. How do you come in and you lower everybody around you to make everybody feel comfortable around you?
Well, that's very nice of you to ask that question, because one of the things that I always tried to do when I was leading the community meetings within Microsoft, and if you joined us late, we were talking about this security community within Microsoft that we've got probably 2,000 to 3,000 people that are members. And at any given meeting, okay, I have lost track, but I've lost track. But yeah, huge number of people at Microsoft are members of this community, and we routinely have meetings with let's say 200 people in attendance. And interestingly, the first times I ever had to present on those meetings, I was literally shaking. I was literally almost fainting. I was so nervous to speak in front of not only so many people, but these amazing security people at Microsoft who I really looked up to, who I really put on a pedestal. And, gradually I came out of my shell. I ended up leading that community for 2 years, which Brody took over for me and is doing that now. But in any case, one of the things that I always made sure I did when we had a community meeting is I would ask the question, who's here new? Who's here for the first time at this meeting, just joining us? Welcome to you. And someone called me out on that one time, and said, I love how you do that, because it's so important for new people to the company, for new people to the community. So just, be genuine, be kind. I do believe that putting good karma out there, doing things for other people does come back to you. And that's sort of how I conduct myself.
So I'd like to ask a question, and I think we've met before. So
we got to wrap up, my friend. Liz has a time limit
super
block
important,
of
but
6:10 p.m.
maybe So Liz, I see that you were the IT manager at Exmar offshore company at one time in your life.
Yes, that's correct.
Was that ever called Gulf Shore Offshore?
No, no. I can honestly say that because they were a relatively newer company, but they were a child company of a very old company called Exmar.
I used to do work there. That's what I thought. I put in the BPOS there. I was like, oh my
Okay.
God, I must have read a crossword sometime.
BPOS, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay.
He's older than he
That was an
looks.
interesting job. I covered Houston, so I
Yeah.
was always down there.
Oh, okay.
When I
Cool.
saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, she used to work at this thing.
It's very possible that we did meet because I've always worked in Houston now, 20 or more years. And it's not unusual when I was going out to meet customers that people would either know me or they would say, oh, did you work at such and such, and so I won't say that I know everyone in IT in Houston, but I know a lot of people.
And if you ever had the best gig, I'll leave it with this. They used to put me up in the Houstonia.
Oh, nice. Not bad,
That was a
man.
big gig there.
That's
Absolutely.
oil money there. Yeah.
Yeah, make it rain. Yeah, for sure.
Liz, thanks a ton for joining us
Yeah,
today
this has been
and for
great.
sharing your journey, your experiences. Your talks on cyber resiliency internally at Microsoft was fantastic. We love that presentation. I linked to your blog in our chat, and we'll make sure it's in the show
Put it in
notes.
the-
Good job getting on the official Microsoft blog. That's awesome, and I'm just really happy you're able to join here today, and as a fellow community member and a fellow friend internally that we converse with a lot. I just want to say thanks again for everything. We really appreciate your time, and we all appreciate everything you do.
Well,
And
thank you very much.
I feel
Thank you
blessed
so
that I came in so late. Golly.
Well,
Thanks
better
for-
late than never.
Oh my
Better late
goodness.
than never.
You're actually going to have to watch your own show later just so you can figure it out.
I am gonna. Well, I do watch my own show. Like
I know. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Well,
I
Edward, it's
don't.
okay. You could set us up for the next episode. Who's on next?
Oh, yeah.
The
All
next show will be
Andy?
Ruti Lamba, who is the senior program go-to-market for security at Microsoft. Super deep, super connected, super like get her tentacles to do and help everybody be elevated. As a matter of fact, I got an email from her chief of staff that was confirming for next week. So that will be, yeah.
Yeah, people definitely need to check the schedule because I think I saw that email. They were trying to adjust the time or something. She
Adjust
had a
the
meeting
time.
come up. So everybody, please check that schedule. The other thing is, and I know Liz has to go, the following Monday, March 31st, is our first Women in Cyber virtual event. We have, that's like a whole day. So check the schedule, check the times. We have 3 wonderful guests on that Monday. Not that today was not wonderful, but today was absolutely fabulous. So,
Got better guests coming up, you guys. It'll be all
No,
right.
not at all.
Every
No.
guest is
No,
involved.
I'm kidding.
Not
I'm
at all.
sorry.
But anyway,
And
Thanks,
so,
Rod. Thanks, Edward. Like I can't wait for these shows to come up.
Yeah,
We've got
wait,
a fantastic month
Let's-
of guests lined up here.
thank you so much. I'll if I came late, I'll do the courtesy of ending the show. Thanks everyone. Thank you, Liz, for coming on the show. My apologies for being late. This month is where I try not to miss any shows. Unfortunately, I had a customer. They were in the UK, so I dressed appropriately. You see the patches, right? Gotta start with that. Make it.
you look like a professor. Yeah.
I was told you have to be on camera, so I had to put adult clothes on.
Oh, yeah.
You have to do it. And Liz, you're always welcome to come back on the show. You don't have to wait for an invite. You can come on and co-host the show. Please do. We love to have you come on and give your perspective. To me, Women in Cyber is every month. And it should be as such. Everyone, we'll be back March 24th. We will have our guest, Ruti Lamba from Microsoft. And then we'll give more updates on the end of Women in Cyber Month grand finale. You don't want to miss it. Be
It's
there.
a halo of stars. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much, Liz.
Thank you very
All right.
much.
Have a good
Have a
week,
great day.
everyone. We'll
Take
talk
care.
soon.
Thanks, Liz.